The following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, that music means it's time once again for the Option Block. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com as well as the old Options Insider Radio Network. And I am joined today on the old Option Block All-Star panel. Well, we're really just a panel of two today. I am joined by the man from the mountains himself, a.k.a. Uncle Mike, a.k.a. Thursday Mike, a.k.a. Mike Tusaw from Know Your Options, Inc. Uncle/Thursday Mike, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's always good to be here. It's like maybe we need the welcome back Cotter music to come on Thursdays when I come on board.
I just heard, which one was it? Epstein, I think, just died, I heard the other day.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So a sad day for all you welcome back Cotter fans. I know if Sebastian was here, he probably would be weeping uncontrollably. Of course, the 70s is a little early for him, I think.
Yeah, he's an 80s guy. He's an 80s guy, that's for sure.
And we are also joined on the old All-Star panel today by the man from Maine, Mr. Lobster himself, good old Andrew Giovinazzi of OptionPit.com. Mr. Lobster, what is going on in the world of Maine and or options?
Maine, it is ice skating weather, and as in right now for me, not much is going on in options except for Apple keeps going up.
You're hitting the lead, right off the bat. We'll get to it. We have Uncle Mike on the show with us today, our good old in-house Apple devotee, and he shall give us all of the latest scoop on how great it is to be long Apple. So I think with that, we're going to dive right into the Trading Block.
The Trading Block.
All right, and that trading cacophony means it's time yet again for the old Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what is trading. And from a broad perspective, most of the major indices are pretty much unched or up a fraction of a percent today, so not exactly much trading in the broad market. The good old VIX up a wee bit, up 0.4, nearly half a point, 2.2% to 18.56. But as the man from Maine alluded to, the big story of the day, yet again, surprise, surprise, is good old Apple AAPL lighting up the tape yet again. Up nearly 4% on the day, closed at 493.17, up 16 and a half handles roughly. I know it was up higher. It was up almost, what did it hit? Let me see if it hit the 500 level intraday here. You danced with it. It got up to almost 497 intraday. But Apple up another. When here we are debating since three half roughly if this thing is ridiculously overpriced, and it has just pushed all of our concerns aside. Even post earnings, we're like, well, maybe this is the final inflection point here. They're going to settle down for a while. This thing is up 10% roughly since earnings, which was just a few weeks ago. So Apple just off to the races. Of course, the big news in Apple today was that they had their way cleared to acquire some Nortel patents, which if you've been paying attention at all to the technology, particularly the hardware side of the spectrum of late, the patents are where the game is being fought these days. That is where the battle is being waged. People are acquiring companies left and right in order just to acquire their patent portfolios, and Apple has been eyeing those Nortel patents for quite a while, and they finally had their way paved to acquire them. So that, of course, sent the stock off to the races yet again. So, Uncle Mike, as I alluded to in the open, just give our listeners just a quick overview of how awesome it is to be long Apple these days.
Well, it's in terms of the BBI, the fact that we have to keep rolling up these covered calls definitely has been lucrative to do.
Talk about first world problems. Oh, I have to roll up my covered call again.
Oh, it's just something else, I tell you. But
I light my cigars with $20 bills.
Right after earnings, we were in the 450 call, and so I'm like, all right, well, I was planning on rolling it up the day after earnings, but when I was going to my computer to do it, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to stare at this, and because it had gone to like 447, I'm just going to stare at this until it touches 450, and I'm just going to keep it where it is. So I never rolled up the 450 call, and then it went through 450, and then I just left it open for a little while, and then so we got up to like 455, 457, something like that. Sold the 465 call. Like, all right, well, it's not going to go to 465 in February. I mean, if it does that, great. It'll be a great problem to have. And then, well, as you all know, it did. Went through 465. And so right around the 466 level, I wanted to do it sooner, but I think it just moved too quick on me. I couldn't move my hand fast enough, it felt like. Rolled it up to the March 490s, and surely it's not going to go to 490 by March. And so today we are actually open to the upside on Apple for tonight. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of doing that, but for right now, I'm going to leave it open. And then tomorrow, if we start coming down, I'll sell calls, but I'm not going to wait very long. So it has been quite the mental battle being a collar trader on something like Apple, that is for sure.
You're actually open. I know you were discussing doing that right around post earnings a little bit. I think you had some discussions about perhaps, or I think towards the end of the year last year might have been where you were thinking about just getting long the upside, or just getting long and leaving it open to the upside. And I guess you opted for the old covered call after all, but you're finally going off open, or naked, I should say. A very bold move, sir.
Well, it's one where I'm kind of schizophrenic in a way, because there's been times where I've been open on the way up on this for certain stints, and then I always go back to the covered call, and with it, I want to be in the covered call to keep with the original objectives of the plan. I mean, that's important, don't get me wrong, but it's up 4%. I mean, it's tough to. I want to take what the market gives me, and that's just how we've been doing it.
And listeners, we are also joined, better late than never, by good old John Grigas, holding down the Options Express hot seat today. Mr. Grigas, welcome back to the show, sir.
Yeah, sorry to arrive late, Sebastian-like.
Sebastian style.
Yeah, compliance when they come knocking, you got to drop whatever you're doing, because God knows whatever they have is a hell of a lot more important than what we're working on. So,
good thing they didn't listen to the show. They might take some.
Did you guys just bag on my compadre there, my partner, my main man?
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't know if you've heard the show, but that is a recurring theme. But Mr. Grigas, we were just talking to Uncle Mike about how great it is to be long Apple and just to be rolling in piles of money as he is wont to do on a regular basis. And how much of your day today was spent fielding Apple calls and people wanting to roll and do all this other fun stuff?
You saw what the Dow did today, like up 30 or 40 points at its high, down 15 points. And believe it or not, we were slammed all day long. I mean, we had a huge DART count today, daily average revenue trades. Phones were constant the entire day, and it had it all to do with Apple. I mean, I could not believe 30% of our calls are probably on Apple. We have a lot of people making money, and you saw, I had emailed for Andrew and Tusa. I emailed one of my trades to Mark. I think it was on Tuesday or Monday. Well, I did about 2 more of those trades. I keep buying puts on Apple.
You're single-handedly propelling it up here. That's you.
The only way I'm not going to buy puts on Apple is if I have run out of money, which I'm getting closer and closer. But I didn't really get to see what the news was, other than new iPad 3 and some iTVs, and then maybe an upgrade. I mean, is that what you guys were talking about?
It was actually they had their way cleared ahead of them they've been looking to acquire more patents in the mobile space, and they had that way, I think, finally cleared for them today to acquire some Nortel patents, and that really seemed to have set them off to the races, because as we talked about earlier, patents are the name of the game in the hardware and in the mobile space particularly. So that's
I drove in today and arrived to work a little bit later, and I heard an interesting thing on the radio that Eastman Kodak to cut cost is no longer going to make digital cameras, recorders, or picture frames. So I think they're just going to have 5 guys sitting around on their patents or something, because isn't that pretty much what they develop?
Yeah, they've been.
I was like, so pretty much you're not going to do anything anymore.
Speaking of, I know Tim Navabi will be sad to hear what has befallen Kodak. I know he was a size player in Kodak for a while there. But yeah, Kodak slinging in the old pink sheets these days, ticker symbol EKDKQ. That one rolls off the tongue, trading a whopping 40 cents. And you're right, they're on the opposite side of that spectrum. They've been trying to sell their patent portfolio for a while now, and apparently it's not that good, which is surprising given the fact that Kodak's been around forever. And they have some very early patents, I know, on the digital imaging side. They were the progenitor in many ways in many senses of the digital camera revolution. They just chose to sit on those patents and to sit on those developments and not cannibalize themselves. And look what happened to them. They're a good example of sometimes you have to cannibalize yourself in order to survive. But yeah, they apparently their patents aren't worth a heck of a lot because no one's buying. They've been trying to sell those off for quite a while now. That was supposed to be the last kind of nail in their coffin when they couldn't sell that patent portfolios when they finally just declared bankruptcy. So yeah, very much the other side of the coin there in terms of what we're seeing with Kodak. Of course, Apple and Kodak, not the only stories of the day. It is a post-earnings bonanza going on the street today. We saw a lot of names announcing over the past few days and resulting sell-offs. We saw a good old Groupon, a.k.a. the new mini Widowmaker, down about 14% again today. Mr. Griegus, a lot of activity for Groupon, or people kind of burned out there? I know a lot of people were selling downside in Groupon as soon as it came out because those puts were so overbid and those conversion reversals were so bid to the sell side, and then they got burned when the stock gapped down the first time. Have they kind of been out of Groupon ever since, or were they selling premium again going into earnings?
No, we had a lot of people on the sidelines on Groupon, Pandora. Those IPOs are, like a flash in the pan. A lot of interest in when the options. When are the options coming out? When are the options coming out? And then they kind of dissipate. I was short the 17 puts when Groupon traded down to 15, and was surprised at how quickly it sold off, and then how quickly it bounced back. So we didn't have too many people playing their earnings around Groupon. Probably kind of a wait and see. We continually talk about how it's a Ponzi scam on this podcast, and I actually like Groupon. I think it's a long-term buy, and I think know your options in the option pit is behind me on that one as well. I think you're the lone wolf on this one, Longo.
Those boys are a wee bit partial to the, let's say, social media sector. I know Kavanaugh was loving LinkedIn back in the day. He since has revised his statement on that. Speaking of, good.
Full disclosure, I do not have anyone in Groupon and any of the assets with which I manage.
You're 127% Apple with a wee bit of silver and gold thrown in there.
Not just 100%. I changed my mind. I'm just going to buy all 520 calls for next week.
That's it,
100%.
baby. That's it, baby. Swing for the fences. Hey, if recent history is any guide, you cannot go wrong with that strategy, sir.
Well, I think Tusa is a good money managed strategy. You just buy the stocks that go up. Don't worry about the ones that go down. I think that's solid.
Yeah, I like it. You should stick with that strategy, Andrew. I think you'll go far. You got a future in this business, kid.
I'm trying to. I try to buy just the stocks that go up.
Yeah, we had a SIBO announcing before the open today. They announced decent numbers, record volumes across the board, and yet it was a resounding shrug across the board for the stock. Pretty much went out. So if you were the guy out there selling that ATM straddle for about $1, or the iron condor, or the downside put spread, whatever the case may be, you looks like you fared well going into that earnings. But of course, we mentioned on the show before, I think one of the interesting things to highlight, I was looking through some of our positions. We've been doing a lot of in and out of earning trades this week, whether it's Ford, we had some stuff going on with Cisco. Of course, Cisco announced earnings as well. They were actually fairly good. Looks like the turnaround is in place for Cisco, yet the stock sold off quite a bit today, closed down about 2% to 20 even. I know, Uncle Mike, we're not supposed to talk about this name, so you can just cover your ears. But of course, any pain Cisco might have caused you has been well erased by the love that Apple has bestowed upon you of late. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
It's totally out of my mind. I'm so over Cisco.
But I was just looking at some of our positions, and this is probably one of the first times on a long time that I can recall that we went into so many different earnings announcements long premium. It's not a typical strategy for us, and yet across the board, Activision, we had long premium going in there. We worked some long premium in Cibo. I don't think we ever got it, and we were long premium in Ford and a number of others, and as well as So it's just been interesting, and Cisco, of course. The good old beast of Cisco, betting to the dark side in Cisco, as we are wont to do. But yes, interesting.
22 volatility in April. 22 vol in Cisco.
Exactly. I mean,
like
how can you? What are you going to do? Come out and
never going to move again.
Exactly. What are you going to do? Come out and dump straddles at that vol level? That's absurd. No, this is one of the few earnings I
don't know. I had to buy some today. I couldn't help myself.
Well, you are the degenerate premium buyer of the group, but of course, I'm getting right there with you lately. I was looking at our statement the other day of our different across our accounts, and I was like, wow, long premium. I'm turning into a Grigas here or something, just buying everything I can see.
Yeah, I make money selling premium, and then I think I can call the market, so I buy it, and then I lose money. So I think I'm going to go back to selling Groupon puts tomorrow morning.
Speaking of which, speaking of numbers, Activision has come out after the close. Another one, we actually have a short premium position in Activision. Of course, I hedged it to the upside right before the close, just betting against. Wanted to cover my bets. Looked like that was a prescient move as the stock closed at about $12.60. Trading close to 13 right now in the after hours, and I hedged up with the 13 calls. So looks like that was a good move going into that name. Activision is one I like to trade around a lot. Andrew, I know you've been playing in Take-Two and a few others. Were you playing at all in Activision going into earnings? It's been an interesting one to watch for a while.
No Activision going into earnings. I've been busy elsewhere. But I think I like that for the post-earnings, especially with this NASDAQ starting to percolate a little bit in general. The old little birdie about the risk reversal in there. It's kind of it's an attractive looking type of stock for something like that.
Yeah. We've been trading Activision risk reversals for a long time. It's one of the first times we didn't actually have that. Actually, I think we legged into what amounted to a short iron condor for the most part. But yeah, or actually more of a short iron butterfly, which is my preferred position. I'm more of an iron fly man myself. Speaking of earnings, also LinkedIn after the bell today closed at 76.40 roughly, trading around 79.30 or so in the after hours. So people seem to be liking LinkedIn again. LinkedIn hasn't really received the explosion of love that some of the other social media sector type names have received, like Andrew's favorite Zynga. So they're getting a little bit of love post earnings here today. And interesting. A lot of stuff to watch. A lot of interesting stuff coming out these days. Gotta love earnings season. It's bread and butter for degenerate options traders like us, and I'd imagine most of our listeners.
My only thing is just why with the market kind of going up, there has been no sell-off. We haven't gone to the next level and people selling the volatility anywhere in the indexes, just in case anybody's scoring at home.
You mean
I find that odd.
Why aren't they crushing S&P or VIX to new lows? Why aren't they crushing VIX to approximate 17
at one point today,
or so?
I think the VXX was up. I mean, it's definitely. I think nobody wants to sell. Nobody's hitting the bid on that stuff yet. That's my only.
Well, we saw a lot of aggressive bid hitting over the past few weeks. I think people are maybe taking a bit of a hiatus from that, and seeing what else they could do. I mean, you have to really. I mean, obviously, realized vol and implied still have quite a disparity between the two. So if you're looking at a pure realized perspective, there still is room to sell. But that's been a dangerous strategy of late, especially with the VIX. There's been a significant premium between the two, and they don't always come together. When they do, they came together pretty hard in December. But since then, the two have been trading at a bit of a discrepancy again, and it's anyone's guess whether that discrepancy will close or pop back to the upside with some crazy news out of Europe. And I think you got to be pretty hardcore to want to capture those last point or two of discrepancy versus all that upside risk you're incurring. I think either way, if you're going to do it, you have to really be nuanced about it and not leave yourself extremely open to the upside in any of these vol products, because we could be seeing that proverbial pop again at any moment. Do what I did in Activision today and cover your upside risk. It usually works out for the better. All right, and with that, we're going to close out the old trading block today and roll right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, and I love that little tail end to that music. We got that little kick at the end. It's just a perfect kickoff to the old Odd Block. This is, of course, where we break down the activity that's been lighting up our dubious tape today, or perhaps intriguing, sometimes questionable, sometimes just downright interesting activity. We're going to kick things off today with one of my personal favorites, perhaps not in the trading realm, but in their products, is good old iRobot, the boys who make the Roomba. We have several Roombas floating around Options Insider HQ on any given day, cleaning and scrubbing and doing all of their various menial tasks, so I don't have to. Well, iRobot came out and reported stellar record results. This is kind of a repeated refrain we've been hearing from a lot of names lately. Record results, yet also some murky guidance going forward on their defense business. They make a lot of robots for the military sector, obviously, and that proceeded to crush the stock, down a third today, down 13.13 points to 25.17. So a thorough smashing here for iRobot stock. This is the name that usually does around 200 contracts a day, so not an active options name at all. They did nearly 10,000 today, and a lot of, it was a mix of activity, actually. We saw people coming in and doing what you might expect in a name like this, using options to try to get short ahead of this rampaging sell-off in the stock. We saw nearly 2,000 of the Feb 25 puts going up, with the bulk of those being buys ranging from 25 cents to 45 cents. We also saw some of the March 25 puts being picked up, prices ranging from around $1 to $1.25. I think about 700, 800 of those went up today. All these many times the typical ADV that goes up in iRobot. We also saw on the long-term side, well, actually, before we leave March, we saw, actually, it wasn't all negative Nellies piling into iRobot. A few people thinking that the sell-off was overdone. Particularly, we saw some buying activity on the March 30s. About 1,600 of those went up. That was predominantly buys, though there was some selling activity there as well. A lot of people scooping up those calls in the 40 to 50 cent range. We also saw some people, some of the more savvy players, leaning out to the longer term in the SEP and June 25s. Looks like they were either legging into short combos or into conversions. I don't have the underlying up here to see what underlying went up against that. It's kind of hard to see with those numbers, but about 300 or so of each of those, 250 to 300 went up on those combos / conversions as well. So people using the options for a variety of different outcomes today, either looking to get short ahead of the apocalypse or to pick up some near-term to mildly longer-term bullish positions, thinking that this sell-off is overdone. Any of you folks out there trading or active in iRobot? Andrew, these conversion reversals, they have you written all over them right here.
I'm ready to hear what Andrew has to say on these. I'm excited.
Me too. I mean, wow, iRobot.
iRobot. I have to look at the short interest. This has not come across my nose. I don't know. I don't. The only thing I can think of those conversion reversals are somebody wants to get long the stock so they can whack it on the way down. You buy puts, sell calls, buy stock, and some guys like having, if they can't get a short sale off, they trade the conversion so they can whack the stock of it as it's going down. That's
that's the only
thing I can think of.
Right
they get bought in, and they write more in the money calls against it.
The Grigas style.
Well, if it blows up in their face, yes, obviously.
And then they realize they're not bought in until settlement of 3 days, so they buy it themselves 2 days before or a day before, and then they write in the money calls again. Not very good.
They're worried about they're going to pull out of Afghanistan, huh? They pull out of Afghanistan, they're not going to buy any more robots.
Yeah, one would think
that's the big worry.
Yeah, one would think that the cessation of hostilities, or at least perhaps the mild calming of hostilities in the Middle East, at least from our concern, would be a negative development for iRobot. After all, the bulk of their money is not in the cute little vacuum cleaners they sell to people like me, but to the evil Roombas they sell for battle overseas. I want to see a battle Roomba. a vacuum with machine guns. That's something I want to have.
What do they really?
Does it look something like a? Oh no! I'm sorry. You remember the RoboCop? You remember that thing that he had to fight at the end?
that giant.
Is that kind of what they look like?
Yeah, exactly. It's a giant bipedal machine gun wielding monstrosity that they just unleash. No, I think actually
if I was the Taliban, I would be crapping my.
That's not a bad idea. One of those shows up on your doorstep. I think you're going to wave the right flag pretty quick. But they make actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, they make I think what are pretty much glorified ROVs, remote operated vehicles, to explore caves. They're pretty ruggedized and tough. You can throw them into a house and then drive it around remotely so you can see if anybody's inside waiting for you, or a cave or that sort of thing. Also, so probably some bomb disposal type things as well. I don't know if they make the drones as well. They might also make some of those as well. So a lot of those are remote controlled, remote operated type vehicles for the military, doing those jobs that our boys overseas don't want to do. All right, and then moving on in the old odd block here to a first comer for the odd block. This is AMDOCS Limited, ticker symbol DOX, DOX, another name that lights up the charts on a regular basis, does about 200 contracts a day. They did 5,200 today, so a sizable increase today. They, of course, closed down, pretty much unched on the day at $30.31. And this is the name that's kind of vacillated quite a bit over the last few months. They were trading back in the mid-20s back in October. They had earnings back in November. They were trading over 30 for a while there, and then pretty much sold right back off to the mid-20 range, mid to high 20 range again. They've been slowly creeping up ever since, and they've just had earnings a few weeks ago. It's like, and that upward trend is continuing here in DOCS. And what we saw actually was pretty much one trade. Was of the 5,200 contracts and up today, 5,093 of those came up in one big trade. Or in the April 32 halves, we saw a size buyer of those, including a block of 3,785 for 30 cents. The rest of them picked up in smaller allotments for around 25 cents. And initially it looks like, wow, this is a size upside spec. Maybe this guy knows something that's going on. Then you start parsing the volume a little bit, and especially look at some of the open interest numbers, particularly that one strike. And there's actually most strikes in DOCS are a couple hundred contracts at most, and this one strike in April has over 4,000 in open interest. This guy looks like he could have been closing out a covered call or any number of other positions, but I had to wager if I was this guy was either naked short or he was on a covered call and is just taking it off because he's pulling a two-saw and wants to get naked long to the upside in DOCS, because that is where the action is.
Let's get naked.
Well, as long as the stock goes up. Hey, I used to trade this stock as a market maker, and there was this one customer that just rolled these calls all the time. Yep, just sold them. Sold like $5,000 every 2 months or something.
Really?
Like
well, there you go. This guy
he made a fortune. Yeah.
Well, he's still playing apparently. His 5,000 lot of DOCS is that was, if he's been doing this for that while.
If you look at that stock, it hasn't done much. The only thing I think he's made money on is selling the calls. Because I remember I think that unless it's split in the last few years that I've missed, I think it's around the same price.
See, and as far as
Probably some guy that owns a ton of stock there.
Yeah, you're right. It has over the last 2 years. It's almost the exact same chart. It bounces up to low 30s and then right back down to the mid 20s and then up to the 30s again. Yeah, it's kind of like this big. It's actually a great covered call selling name. Actually, if you can hit these peaks on a regular basis, and it sounds like this guy has had pretty decent timing.
Yeah, because it was very hard to make money trading these calls. You just had to hold on to them and kind of pray the stock would move, as I recall, which makes it really painful.
This is the nightmare scenario for a market maker. Completely one-sided paper, no size, no liquidity, no way to hedge it or get out of it. You're just riding these calls the whole time until he comes to close them out. So, yeah, I can't imagine this was a very profitable name.
I mean,
for you.
5 years ago it was trading around the 30 handle too, so. He had a little run to 40, but pretty much just holds the stock and sells 30s forever.
Gotta love these guys who have this
Pretty
one.
fun.
Hey, if it seems to be working for him, he's been doing it for years. So, I guess more power
I think
to
it's
this
working
guy
great.
and his docs sales. Gotta love it. All right, and closing out the old odd block today, we're just gonna do a quick review of something we talked about on January 30th. We actually hit on it a little bit last show. We were joking last show about the social media. The love fest that went on post Facebook IPO announcement, and then of course the immediate implosion of that sector. And we talked about RENN actually getting all that love back on January 30th in the wake of the IPO announcement from Facebook, and the stock took off. We saw it doing many times its average daily volume. People were scrambling to buy up calls left and right. And now looking at RENN, these names, we actually have some numbers we looked at. We kind of touched on it quickly on the last show, but yeah, people were racing. They bought about 12,000 of the Feb 6 calls in RENN. Of course, RENN closed at $5.22 today. These are still, this 12,000 lot, the open interest is still open on this name. People were buying them for upwards of 90 cents, sometimes close to $1, and they're trading about a dime to 15 cents today. So big winners on those. The Feb 5 puts, about 4,600 of those were sold, and those are in the 25 to 30 cent range. Those are probably the only trade that's really holding up well, as of course, the someone prescient fellow, perhaps he was legging into that 5-7 put spread, but there were 7,000 of these Feb 7 puts that were purchased, and those are looking a lot better obviously today. Those are trading those were purchased from $1.25 to $1.60. They're trading about $1.85, $1.90 today. Of course, people getting really gung-ho. 5,000 of those Feb 7s were picked up, gobbled up for between 50 to 60 cents. Those are offered at a nickel right now. And the April 6s, people were fighting to gobble those up. 5,000 of those are purchased for anywhere from $1 to $1.50. They've come off $1 since then to trading about 50 cents. Those are still open as well. About 7,000 open interest on that strike, and about on the Feb 7s about 6,000. So all of these calls unfortunately still open, and people looking like they're feeling a lot of pain in RENN, which just goes to show that our repeated mantra here on the old odd block, that the size money is frequently not the smart money, particularly when they're just following the herd like this and buying into a random Chinese social media company because Facebook has rumors of an IPO coming.
How do you have a social media network in China? I was just reading the RENN description, and they're like the leading China offering information and content sharing, music, online games, and online shopping. It didn't seem like that thing would be allowed in a socialist company or a socialist country like China.
There's a thriving interest, especially among the technorati over there who know how to get around these things, to trade, to do these things and to share. This is the way to kind of get around a lot of the government restrictions. And also there's just a big economy over there in doing things for free online and then selling microtransactions against them. And so that I'd imagine this company operates in that same format. It does fairly well over in Asia, so I'd imagine they're exploiting a similar model. So just moral of the story, when the herd is going one way, perhaps you might want to consider going the other way. The Grigas style, as I like to call it.
That's why market makers made so much money.
Apple.
Yeah, exactly. Except in Apple. The herd has been correct in Apple. It reminds me of the old end of the dot-com boom days where it didn't matter what you bought as long as it was tech because it went up. Apple, same thing. Doesn't matter where you get in. It's only going up. All right. That is going to...
easy.
Yeah, it is that easy. Exactly. Lots of BBIs, or very low BBI, I should say. All that call rolling in Apple. All right, that's going to do it for the old odd block today. And now we're going to roll right into the express block.
The Express Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and that music means it is time for the Express Block. This is the portion of the show where the boys from OX take the reins, and Andrew and I, sit back and relax and enjoy the wit and wisdom that pours from the OX font. So, Mr. Grigas, what do you have in store for us today on the wit and wisdom front?
Well, I know we talked about Facebook last Thursday, a day after the big news story was that they had filed their papers to IPO.
Was there some news with Facebook? What are you talking about? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think Andrew came up with the very unique name. I think he bought the rights, and he's going to try to sell it to him for the acronym FCBK. I think we all agree that has to be the front runner right now for the Facebook trading symbol. But so we get a lot of calls on it. So what I went ahead and did is put it up on the Market Insights, and we've talked about this on the show before. But we do have an OX Social tab on the private side of the platform. Under OX Social, we have Market Insights, and the question I proposed to the group, and Andrew, Tusaw, and Mark, if there's ever a question you want to see up there, let me know, and I'll run it by our compliance group. They're always fun to deal with. What will Facebook's closing price be on the first day of trading? Okay. Now, kind of an open-ended question since we don't know when Facebook's actually going to start to trade. Different articles say as early as April to late June. Either way, our customers saying that they're going to get the price wrong. As I think on the high end right now, they're saying $40. And if you go to Options Express, log in and take a look at the Market Insights, of the people that have voted, they're saying a closing price on the first day of $87.61. And I think even just this week we had Caesars go public, and it was up, what did it go out at $9 and close around 15, 16, 17, maybe around there. So every IPO is usually sold at a discount, and with a net price of $87.60 right now, the Options Express clients are saying that Facebook's going to be somewhere along those lines as well. What do you two think for a closing price? The
boys over at Morgan Stanley should be paying attention to your little network there. That could do a lot of their work for them. And so
we should say, like, that's what we should do is put another question up there: who will be closer to the actual close? I mean, what did they say we pay? They pay a few $1 million. I mean, what's the fees on this?
I believe if I remember correctly, it was hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a substantial amount of money to undergo this entire process. And this, I mean, your little message board there at the social media site there just goes to show how simple this would have been to do without most of those fees as a Dutch auction. Let the market decide where this comes out. Why do we need yet another underwriter, an intermediary coming in, setting the price at, let's say, 40, it opens at 60, and then trades to 80 on the opening day, and they leave that extra half on the table. I mean, it's terrible for the client. The only person that's good for is that intermediary. It's terrible for the public. They can't participate until the inflated levels approach. Let the market determine where these things open. It's absurd that we still have this ridiculous intermediary process. I mean, it serves a purpose for very low float, illiquid names that really can't find a value any other way. But something like Facebook does not need an intermediary to determine its IPO price. That's absurd.
So call your closing price. I'll write it down, and I'll give you $10 if you're the closest. Let's go ahead.
Closing price. I really have no idea. I haven't looked at the Facebook. I'm going to pull an Andrew here, and I haven't looked at their fundamentals, their PEs, I know they make some cash, but how I don't even know how big the float's going to be. Is it going to be a sizable float? Have they even announced that?
No, I don't think they've announced that. 5 to 10, I'm hearing, yeah.
They're going to raise $10 billion on $100 billion valuation. That's the last I heard.
I mean, obviously that float's going to...
I'm going to say on $100 billion valuation, nobody's going to give a damn that it's $100 billion. You're just going to look at the stock, and the thing's going to close up 50% on the first day.
Yeah, this thing has echoes.
That would be my number. Up 50% or wherever they listed at.
Really?
Wherever it goes.
Whatever it opens, up 50%. If you people are saying 80 and 90, that's where it closes that day. I guess I'll join on the fun parade. Then I'll say north of 100. How about that? I'll go aggressive. I'll go over 100.
Well, on those lines, I read another article about the tax implications that Zuckerberg's going to have to pay on his options because of the options that he has are taxed at a normal income.
Yeah, it's several billion in taxes, is it not?
Yeah, it was going to be like around 1.2 billion. They said it'll be the biggest if he decides to exercise that amount of options enough to pay for the taxes. That it should be the largest tax bill, in U.S. in history. It's staggering when you say that. I paid $1 billion in taxes. What the size of that is on a.
Dude, I would love to pay $1 billion in taxes.
Anybody would, and I'd love to be 27 years old again too, right? Not only is he paying that much in taxes, he's not even out of his mid-20s yet. So we do have that up there. So if you have a chance, go over there. You can see we have a limited amount of people that have probably even know of OX Social based on the response that we have on those questions. So get in there, cast your vote, get in the community forum there as well. One of the other things that I wanted to mention last Thursday is that when we were bought by Schwab, we did lower our commissions $8.95 to this was recently. All stock is $8.95 flat. We used to do $9.95 up to $1,000, so it's pretty much a penny a share above $1,000. So this $8.95 flat, has attracted a lot more interest in people that are buying penny stocks. And one of the issues we see is that people have traded stocks before, so they're like, okay, I got this mailer in the mail, and I'm not kidding you, they still do that. I have people call up, they're like, oh, I got this thing about this company. Like, look at NSRS. I'm not even sure what they make, but if you pull it up on a chart. If you're getting something in the mail and it tells you that there's, a secret product they've built or a alliance they've made with a bigger company, you may want to do your due diligence before you come in and you buy 1 million shares of a 0001 stock, because the only people that are going to make money are the people that got in before they sent that mailer out. And some of the issues with penny stocks is that they don't trade on a national exchange. There's no NBBO guarantee. We do have some people that trade them quite conservatively as part of their portfolio, and they'll see a print that's below their bid, and they say, "Hey, that's not fair. They can't trade below my better bid." And the answer is, well, of course they can. It's the Wild West. And you guys can harp on Tim when he's on the show next week. He went ahead and put a advanced order, which is pretty much like a contingent order, on a penny stock. And one thing I want to make clear is that there are two orders that you can place when you trade penny stocks at Options Express: a buy limit and a sell limit, and that's it. So I had, Tim's been out for the last couple of days. He's sick, but I had to take a customer complaint that, Tim walked him through how to place a trade that would never, ever trigger. For OTC bulletin board stocks, we don't display a bid offer on there. I have never in my life traded a penny stock. I was curious if either of you have any experience. It's something that I completely stay away with. I'd rather just go to the boats.
I have recent experience. Go to the boats. I have recent experience because we were trading in and out of Kodak aggressively, particularly towards the end there. So we did inharass some of that EKDKQ.
Why did you hold on to that for so long?
We were trading in and out of it, so we've done all right on our. I have no qualms about Kodak, and we actually just had some flyers left over from when we were trying, because they had popped a bit during all the pre-bankruptcy rumor mill. It kind of ran up a bit for a while there, so we had a good run there too. And we actually were overwritten to the upside.
Out in January, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were overwritten to the upside, so we actually had some good runs, and we ended up getting rid of the last of our underlying, which was actually that was a good trade for us as well. So I have no problems with it. But we did just trade that recently, and that probably was one of my. It's been a while since I've delved into the old pink sheets, and you're right, it is a miserable experience. People are trading in and around you all the time. There is no NBBO. You really have very few options, like you said, for order types. It's not exactly a fun place to be. And of course, yeah, I definitely echo your sentiments on the newsletter side. We see that all the time. We're approached on a regular basis on the Options Insider by people who are in that quote unquote IR, investor relations camp, and they're looking to send emails to our audience to pump their stocks. And it's a very common thing. A lot of big publishers out there actually do that, and it's a significant source of revenue for them. We do not do that, and you know these guys are shady, and they come to you and say, "How much do you charge for this kind of thing?" You say, "Oh, here's this." And say, "Okay, we'll pay you 1.5 times that." Then you know they're doing something dubious, and that's their standard MO. And so that's what we see with a lot of these names. They're these garbage pink sheets, and they make a huge. These people have tens of millions, if not more, shares from a penny, and they don't care how much they spend on promoting it because it comes back to them in the wash of the people coming in to buy it. So definitely, if you hear anything from a newsletter or from a especially from a dedicated email or a mailing, by all means, do not be one of the sheep and follow suit. Definitely not a good place to be. But yeah, interesting stuff going on there, Mr. Grigas. I didn't realize you had changed to the flat structure ahead of post Schwab. You still have the same for options, though, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we haven't changed our option rate. And I think you had a question from a listener that was kind of along those lines.
Yeah, it falls into that fee thing. It actually sounds familiar. I think some people have asked us this in the past. We might have actually answered it on the show a long time ago, probably a year ago, but we still receive this question. This is the more recent version of it on a regular basis. It's probably worth discussing again. Someone wrote into our boards recently, asked if a brokerage says the fee asking about options assignment, and he says if the brokerage says the fee for option assignment is $20, is that per share, per contract? I mean, per 100 shares or per order? And I think we've discussed this on the past. Something like this sounds mildly familiar, maybe like a year ago, but it's worth bringing up again because people are still confused about that fee. So, Mr. Grigas, set them straight, sir.
Well, here at Options Express, and I can't talk for other firms that may want to nickel and dime everybody on expiration, but it's a flat rate, $9.95 for assignments and exercise unlimited. So, you're long 100 contracts of Groupon calls at the money calls because you love it and that stock's going to 30, you would only be charged $9.95 for the exercise fee. I do that on the phone sometimes when I'm in a position of this thing's, if I'm long puts in Apple, I'm like, this thing's going down, right? Try to talk everybody into my position. But assignments $9.95 flat. And like I said, with stock $8.95 flat unlimited. We also have a special commission rate. If you're buying to close options that are 4 cents or less, it's 50 cents an option. We'll see a lot of people use that special commission rate on expiration Friday when they got some out of the money calls or puts and they want to get into next month's or close out that position and release some of that requirement so they can put that money to work elsewhere. So here at Options Express, flat assignment and exercise fee.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. G. And that is going to close out the old Express block. And now we're going to roll right into Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and those car horns mean it's time once again for Around the Block. This is the portion of the show where we peer into the murky ether of the future and attempt to divine what the market holds in store for us. And we'll start off with you, Mr. Tusaw. What is going on your own personal trading screens, Apple aside, of course?
Well, no specific stocks. Apple and Ford are probably the two big earnings stocks that I was really staring down. And I think Apple at 500, we're at a key point there. If we go over 500 tomorrow, which could easily happen, that's definitely going to be a pretty interesting thing for me. But the other thing that I'm looking at, we're around the highs of 2011 in the S&P right now. Not quite there, but we're just a few points away from the highs that we made in late last April. So it'll be interesting to see if we can break through those, because this is a pretty strong point of resistance if you just look at and not that I'm God's gift to technical analysis, nor do I ever claim to be, but I just think this is an interesting mirror of the run that we had from August of 2010 to April of 2011. We came down from pretty decent spot at that point, not quite as much peak to trough as what we're having now, but either way, we're around the highs right now. So I am definitely staring at the S&P 500. Not that I pretty much always do anyway, but nonetheless, that's what I'm looking at this point.
And yet you're still naked to the upside on Apple, because it doesn't matter what goes on in the S&P. Apple is his own beast now. Apple,
yeah, I'm at a point with Apple to where my hands are in the air and I'm saying, okay, well, it's working. Let's just not It works for now. So let's just.
I hear it's 50% of the S&P 500 now, according to market cap.
Holy cow!
Amazing.
That's just a joke, guys. 50%. That would be tremendous value.
I was about to look that up myself and perhaps correct you. I didn't want to do it on air to preserve. I didn't want to shame you like that, but it didn't exactly.
No, you could
didn't sound
me on
kosher.
air. It's okay. It's okay.
All right. And Uncle Mike, of course, you mentioned Ford. That's an interesting one. I think I mentioned earlier that was one of the ones we were trading. Actually, of all the ones we were long premium, Ford was one of the few we were actually short. We were overwritten on that one. That seems to have been a decent strategy. Ford seems to have kind of tapped out here, at least for the near term. What's your play on Ford? Are you just long underlying at this point? Are you even going to bother?
Still just long underlying.
You going to bother writing the calls anymore? Or?
Well, I mean, we're at a point now to where we could, Ford, as most of the viewers know, was my bonehead trade of last year. Cisco I got out before I consider it a bonehead trade. It was just a bad trade. But Ford's one to where I wouldn't be against writing some premium at this level, but I'm still holding off for now. The 13 level on Ford, I think if we can break through there, it'll be interesting to continue to watch it.
Why was Ford your bonehead one? Did you ride it all the way down from last year, or?
Yeah, I got into Ford. Ford was one where it seemed like whenever I mentioned Ford on the air, it would always go down.
Well, yeah, you're pretty much back, I think, to close to even. I think at this point, given what we've seen in that one, and especially if you've been writing some upside along with it, I'd imagine you're ahead of the game by now.
Still a little bit behind, but I mean, nonetheless, this is one to where I'm typically not a buy and hold guy because I think I've mentioned it before. I believe in hedging. Have I ever mentioned that on this show before?
What is this hedging concept you speak of?
Anyway, but Ford was actually one of them where I did have open to the downside, and I just managed risk by having a pretty small position on it, and it's coming around, thankfully.
All right, thank you for that, sir. And next up, we'll go to Mr. G, a.k.a. Mr. Grigas. What are you watching in your own personal screens? I know Tesla is coming up next week. You've been a big seller of downside in Tesla in the past. Are you going to dive back into that fray again?
Yeah, 2 shows at the House of Blues. I'm really looking forward to it. So got my cutoff tee, And
Modern Day Cowboy, an underrated song.
Sorry, the straddle. Yeah, that's right. No, I can't. That one fell off my radar, unfortunately. And one of the things I have been looking at has been Bank of America. I bought and hold that thing under $10, in my son's custodial account. And I think 2 weeks after I bought it, it sold off to I don't know, $6.50. I mean, just literally small little 8 to 10 cent moves every day down for 4.5 months. Within 6 business days after I buy it, the thing drops like 30%, 80 cents in one day, $1 the next. And then Buffett comes in, and I'm like, I was just a couple of weeks too early. And I think in the pre-market, it traded up over $8, about where we're at now. And then it just went down to 5. And I think it bounced off that 5 level twice and has been on an absolute tear. I can't understand how these things change. I mean, at $5, everyone's telling me to just dump it and take the money, and that the company's going bankrupt. And now we're at $8, and I look at them and I say, "Who's retarded now?" I mean, so almost back to break even, which is considered a winner when you're down 40%.
The Grigas house, man, fighting for break even. I love it. Your trading stories of late are definitely making me sad. You're on the wrong. Make sure send me an email before you're going to trade something, so I know if I need to adjust my positions accordingly.
Hey, Andrew, he's very vocal about how he fades me. I mean, when I bought those Groupon 165 calls about 4 months ago, I mean, I lost a lot of money really quick, and I slowly made it all back. And as soon as I got back, I did it selling premium, real slow, 4 or 5 weeks out. I got back to exactly where my account was before I bought those Groupon calls, and then I went in and started buying Apple puts, and I'm about halfway back to where I was. I just can't, It's like, oh, this is working, so let's go change it. I don't know. That's what I do. So I think I'm going to go back to premium selling and try to get my account back to where it was, and keep my eye on Bank of America, and I think start selling out of the money calls. There's not much premium there at all, in Bank of America, but maybe sell some out of the money calls when it gets to back around $9.
Leg into some covered calls for Junior there.
Yeah. Teach him how to write options against his long stock position.
You see, son, when things start going bad, you go to the dark side. That's how you make the money back, son. Sell premium.
I don't mind owning Bank of America. I mean, and I just see some other stocks that, I do like Ford. I probably should have done that, but I'm upset that the way I got into them, I didn't sell cash secured puts. I just went out and bought the stock because I was like, oh, it's at a level that I know is the bottom. So I won't make that mistake again. Buying
stock. What is this? What show are you on, sir?
It's a custodial account. It's a buy and hold. You got to have different allocation, of your funds. And the gambling one is the one I play with. And my son, he's, taking financial stocks that are going bankrupt. So,
well, of course, there are some other names on the horizon. Speaking of Ford, GM, their counterpart in many respects, coming out on the 16th next week. Marriott, for those of you in the travel and hotel game, on the 15th. NVIDIA, the graphics processor, out on the 15th as well. They've had an interesting story over the last year. Upside, downside. They might be the new... They're going to be the next second coming in the mobile processors, and it didn't really work out as people expected with those Tegra chips. So interesting to see what comes out of them as well. A lot of interesting stuff going on. Let's do a last quick rundown of some of the earnings we see coming out today. LinkedIn closed at 76.39, trading right now 81.5. So to the upside there for good old LinkedIn. And Activision closed at $12.66, and they're trading right now at $12.79 in the after hours. So a wee bit to the upside there for Activision. Nothing really lighting up the tape like crazy. Andrew, what are you watching around the block here?
Watching around the block, cheap juice. I'm looking for the old cap, kind of the old technology stocks that nobody loves, like Cisco's, and they're all. I think that the thing that's holding up the NASDAQ is Apple, basically, for its 40-point run. Everything else has kind of been flat. So I think, I don't know. Just looking at some of the cheap volatility in some of those names, because at 20 vol, 18 vol, stuff like that. I mean, you don't have a lot of downside in them. So it looks like a cheaper way to play. So that kind of stuff. And just from a strategy point of view, looking at those, like I said, iron flies, but adding a few more calls to the to your long call side. So you actually have a kind of a modified long delta trade that might sort of run with this market if we keep going, and if market doesn't go anywhere, slides down, the whole at the money collapses. So
the overweighted short. The overweighted to the upside short iron fly. That's your strategy du jour these days, Andrew?
I think so, because I'm trying to figure out how to buy calls without buying calls, essentially. I don't want to have to pay for them unless somebody really puts a gun to my head. But
the perennial question for all options traders: how to get long for free.
Exactly, and that's essentially what and I think as long as you have as long as you protect the thing with spread, even if the market totally collapses, you're not going to lose a whole lot of money on the thing. So, and I think the total market collapse is looking tougher right now. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't pull back for sure, but it's looking tougher.
Thank you for that, Andrew. And of course, a little birdie named Mr. G just pointed out that Nuance was after the close today too. They are, of course, the Dragon Naturally Speaking folks, and they've been around behind a lot of the speech recognition technology that Apple has been using. And they closed at $30.45 today. Now in the after hours, they're trading down about $3 to 27.5. That ATM straddle went out about $3.60, $3.75. So it looks like you're still okay if you were a degenerate premium seller, as we like to say out there in Nuance, but it's looking pretty close. So Nuance not exactly feeling the love that Apple, its big brother, has been feeling of late. And that's going to do it for the Around the Block segment. That's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. I want to thank my partners in crime for joining me on the show today, kicking things off with good old Uncle Mike Tusaw. What is coming up in the land of KYO that may interest and or intrigue our listeners?
Well, what we have going on February 27th, Monday night, I'll be doing a webinar on butterflies, both broken, winged, and fixed. I'll be talking about some of the ways with which we use them at Know Your Options in the longer-term portfolio. I'll be talking about ways with which you can use them in the shorter-term portfolio, and it's going to be very educational. I'll be a guest speaker on the Options Express webinar platform, so for more info on it, go to the Educate tab in the Options Express site and sign up. I'm real excited about it.
All right, thank you for that, Uncle Mike. And Mr. Andrew, a.k.a. Mr. Lobster, a.k.a. Mr. Maine. What is coming up in the land of Maine and or Option Pit? They may interest and or intrigue our listeners. Is there some big Maine festival going on?
Next week. Yep, actually next week. Speaking of earnings and buying and selling the juice around earnings, we are going to do a kind of a diagnostic on how to kind of measure the volatility before earnings, measure volatility and earnings history, and help people kind of shape trades so they just don't, walk into an earnings buzzsaw, so to speak, either from the buy side or the sell premium side. And, sometimes that earnings trade can be pretty tough. So we just want to make sure people understand what they're betting on when they put their hard-earned dollars on any kind of earnings play. So that will be February 15th. It is a free webinar given by me and Mr. Mark Sebastian on the Option Pit, let's call it Webinar Network. A lot bigger than it is, but we give a webinar once a month.
A webinar network, eh? I like it. All right, check out the old Option Pit Webinar Network for that, and of course, you can check out, speaking of Mr. Sebastian, he wrote an interesting article that came up on the Options Insider today regarding Apple earnings and volatility performance post-earnings and how you can have indeed an upside crash in volatility. And that's exactly what we've been seeing in Apple of late, underlying rallying, the vol rallying.
We had insanely happy clients over the last week.
I would imagine that this is a good time to be
very happy clients with that trade.
Long premium in Apple has been the way to go of late. It certainly has been the trade du jour. And Mr. Grigas, last but certainly not least, what is coming up in the land of OX? Any more glad handing with good old Chuck Schwab in your future?
No, I'm going to try to convince the higher ups that I need to go out to Denver and take a look at their call center before the ski season ends. It's been about 10 years since I've skied in Colorado, so I think it's very important that I go out to that call center and give them my synopsis. But other than that, I've gone through the live events. We're midway through February. I've mentioned before in the podcast we do our wish list voting, which if you are an Options Express customer, you can submit to the wish list, and if it's one of the more popular ones, we will put it up for voting by all of our customers. It's one of the ways that we do the voice of the customer here at Options Express, that we actually do listen and then we do implement customer ideas. So the 4 that we have up there currently, let me just run through them real quick. Show credit spread information for calls and puts on the spread chains. Expand available fields for screener results. Show net Greeks for multi-leg option positions, and show order status on the streaming charts, which may seem a little confusing if you got all your orders on your charts. I like to keep mine separate, and since you can detach the streaming charts and have multiple screens up, I don't see that one making it. But it is fun to vote. It is fun to see what's up there. You click the vote, you see who has the percentages. Whoever wins, we implement it usually with about 2 releases out, and we do a release about every 8 to 10 weeks. So you can find that wish list center and where to vote in the overview screen, so account overview, and on the right-hand side you will see the wish list center. And that's about it.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. G. And of course, this is the part of the show where we also like to thank you, the listener out there, for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program and making it such a success. And we'll see you next week right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.